I think people are fascinating. I love that there is a story behind the story. The journey is amazingly beautiful. Join me on this wild and crazy ride.
Tim Sheehan was born the youngest of 5 children to an Irish Catholic family. He loved his life growing up and worked to create a plan that included a successful career, a wife, and lots of kids to fill the house with the perfect amount of chaos and fun. He married at the age of 34, and 2 years later, his daughter Kiara was born happy and healthy. They waited a couple years, and at the beginning of 2008, they found out they would be parents once again. However, during their 20-week ultrasound appointment, there were signs that something was wrong, and days later it would be confirmed that the baby would be born with Down syndrome. Today, Tim shares his journey from anger to acceptance to realizing he was the one given the beautiful gift.
Today, when I approached you about this, it was to talk about your journey, specifically as a dad to a Down syndrome child, who is now 10, a pretty fabulous young man. And so I want you to take the people who will watch this video, I want you to take them through, I guess, the entire journey, right? From that moment of when you think that there is possibly a problem, to here today present where I know he's about to have a birthday, so he's about to be 11 years old. So let's start with, so when is the moment when you kind of realize, I guess, that there might be something that isn't quite right with your wife's second pregnancy?
So that would be during one of the ultrasounds, I think, in like the second trimester or something like that. There was indicators of the nuchal folds back in the neck as being larger, and that's like an indicator of some kind of abnormality. But because of that, those indicators, we had to do the amnio, and then the amnio was that's where we got the positive.
So how many days was the amnio? Did the amnio happen on the same day, or was the amnio later on?
From the ultrasound?
Yes.
No, it was weeks apart. So we had a couple weeks of just nervousness prior to the amnio. So, and then we had another week or so after, about another week after the amnio before we got the news.
So you're just going in for that 20-week checkup, ultrasound, just like many parents who experience it, just like you did the first time around. You get some, as you call them, indicators that there might be something. So they suggest to you an amnio. That takes a couple weeks to possibly get scheduled, couple weeks to get scheduled. What are you thinking about?
There was nervousness. I think there's some anxiety for sure, but life went on. I was very healthy. Connor's mother was very healthy, so what's there to be nervous about? So kind of blew it off a bit, and then didn't do a lot of research on it, and kind of just, I still had a little bit of nervousness, but I kind of thought it was just everything would be fine.
So then Connor's mom goes in for the amnio, and then how much longer before you find out results? How are they going to give you the news that what they had possibly suspected is actually real?
Yeah, so went in for the amnio, and then I think it was about a week. I can't remember exactly how many days it was, but then it was a phone call.
Was it a phone call?
Yeah.
Was it a phone call to you? Phone call? Were you?
No, I was actually at work.
Okay.
So I was at work in Boulder, and so she got the phone call, and then she called me at work. So that is that day I remember.
That day you remember.
Yeah.
So Connor's mom receives the news, and then she has to call you.
She called me, yeah.
So tell me about that phone call.
That one was pure shock. I didn't know what to do at work, so I left, and then I proceeded to hop in my car, and I guess I was going home, but I don't know exactly where I was going, and ended up going to a bar. And there I proceeded to have whiskey to beer to whiskey to beer for I think the remainder of that morning and then into the afternoon. So yeah, so not the ideal reaction, but that's.
Do you want to talk about your walk home?
The bar that I ended up at was probably about 2 miles from my house. Like, I can't drive, so I ended up hiking it home and had a very eventful walk, very emotional walk home for 2 miles. And now I think there's a bit of anger and, why me kind of stuff was coming in there. This is where my struggle with God had started. I was a complete mess.
Growing up Catholic and attending Catholic high school, Tim's faith was always strong. This was the first time he found himself disconnected with God. He questioned everything. What did he do wrong? Why did he deserve this? And why did God shatter all of the plans he had for him and his family? Tim found himself shutting out family and friends, but also choosing to shut out God made this the loneliest time of his life.
So eventually you do have to tell people. Eventually it's time to call family, friends. How did you do that? How was that? Do you remember those phone calls? Do you remember those conversations? Do you remember, it's hard to say the words out loud sometimes when it's not good news.
Yeah, I definitely remember the conversation with my mom, for sure. It was obviously a very emotional phone call. I think my mom said all the right things, the things that she was supposed to. It's hard when we're 1,000 miles apart because, all my family's back in Chicago, and I'm in here in Denver, and all of Lois's family also back in Chicago. So the support system here is all via phone calls. There's no one physically here. But I remember absolutely remember the phone calls. But I having that emotional conversation over and over again just gets so hard. I was just hoping that my family would kind of disperse the news so I wouldn't have to. And they did, for the most part. They worked with the family, and then my friends were I kind of let some of my best friends know, and they kind of communicated. So that's what I was hoping they would do. But I had friends calling me, and I was not returning their phone calls.
I know that you talk about, and kind of at this point acknowledging that you decided to kind of handle it on your own. But was there anything that anyone said or anything that anybody wrote to you that made a difference?
After the fact, yeah. But during it, it's hard to see that stuff. Mostly from my family. I don't know who was hurting more, me or my mom. So she was taking that burden herself. So she was hurting, and
because she's watching her son go through something that's just.
And she can't physically be there. She's 1,000 miles away. So, and it was a struggle for her. But she was, like I said, they said all the right things.
It's just nothing helped.
Not at the time. But as I went back through those conversations, realized that they were the things I needed to hear. I was choosing not to listen.
Yeah. But knowing what you know now, What would you go tell the guy who's cussing at the church?
No, that's an easy one. I took all this on myself. Like, just give me your burden. I can do all this. Don't do it on your own. Like there are so many people out there that want to help, and there are people in like. So since now this is 10 years ago now. I have given my telephone number to tons and tons of people in the same shoes that I was in, and I'm like call me. Like, I've been there, and I don't want you to go through what I went through. And educate for sure. It's not the end of the world. In fact, the beauty of this is it was the best gift that I could ever have. No way I could know that at the time. There's no way. And I wouldn't even, try to tell somebody at the time they're going through this. I'm like, hey, this is the greatest gift you're ever going to go through, because they're not going to believe me. But knowing that you are absolutely not alone. There are tons of people who are also going through this, who have been through this. Don't ignore your family. Don't ignore your friends. They're not going to know what to say, but being there is going to help you get through it.
What are some of the challenges you've had to overcome?
So obviously you always want the best for your kids, whether they're special needs or non-special needs. And so, with some of the special needs aspect, there's certain things that you're going to have to do that are unique, right? So some of it's going to be how to get the best development out of your special needs son. So that could be education, it could be other resources, funding through different groups, different communities. There's all sorts of different things to engage with. So I had to research where's Connor going to go to school. I just can't throw him into any school. I got to make sure that it's got a great SSN program. And I didn't even know, and some of the stuff was just like falling right in my lap. To be completely honest, through happenstance, I met one of the guys on the board at a school that was literally 3 miles away from my house that I didn't know existed, that was built to integrate special needs kids with non-special needs kids as a preschool. And knowing that those type of institutions, those kind of schools are there is key. But you're going to have to do a bit of work. You gotta research. You gotta find out what's available, and then you're engulfed in a completely different community. I had a different plan growing up. Like, I don't ever have a plan, because God will change that. But I never thought I would be engaged in the special needs communities, and it's not that I didn't think special needs kids were great. I just didn't think that I was going to be part of that community.
That happens to someone else.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And so now, I just went to my son's baseball game today. It's a league for special needs kids, and so we're involved in that community, and it's awesome.
Let's face it. Connor has met the Avalanche, he's met the Nuggets, he's met the Broncos.
There's some benefits.
He's been a model on a runway. Standing next to an Avalanche player. So I know that there's a lot of people out there working really hard to connect kids with special needs with the community and what's happening.
There's no shortage of benefits that Connor's had. He did get to see. He's met a few of the Nuggets players multiple times, and the Avalanche players, and it's been fun. He's had a blast.
To find, I guess, the joy or appreciation or the gratitude in all of this becomes really important. So to be able to sometimes smile or find humor in maybe the circumstances I know that you've been able to do that. That's one of your, maybe a gift.
I don't know. I don't know if it was a gift, but the way I think I looked at this initially, and I said earlier, was that like God gave me this because I was going to take care of it. I was going to take care of him. I was going to give him you know, he was going to have a great childhood. He knew that he couldn't put a kid with special needs into better hands than mine. That's what I believed for a long time, and then what I realized that it wasn't that. He was my gift. I needed him. I needed him more than he needed me. And I could talk for hours on how he's changed my life for the better. And just who I am as a man. The list goes on. Patience, humility, all sorts of stuff. But I needed something. He gave me a direction that I didn't know I was looking for at the time.
What keeps you up at night now?
Well, I try not to have anything keep me up at night now. I literally am in the best place I've ever been, but you're always going to worry about your kids, whether they're special needs or non-special needs. You're always going to be worried about your kids forever and ever and ever. But uniquely to Connor, at this point, he is becoming self-aware that he is different in some respects, and so I'm seeing, a bit of sadness and a bit of frustration that comes out of it, and it was one of my worries when I first got the news that like this is what he's going to go through, and but honestly, every kid has to go through that stuff. Every kid has to. There's no perfect life for anybody. Everyone's going to have hardships. Everyone's going to have things they're going to have to go through, and as a parent, you can't protect them from everything. I will be there to support him as much as I can, but there's going to be moments that he's going to have to do it on his own. I think the other big thing is like, let's be honest. I want to make sure that long after I'm off this planet that he's taken care of, like he's good, and so that's the long-term fear, right? Like, how do I make sure he is taken care of long after my time on this planet is done?
What are the pure joy moments? Like, what are the oh my gosh, I can't get enough moments?
My son, it is like living in a sitcom most of the time with him. I am constantly laughing my ass off at some of the things he does or says, and he is he's a jokester, so he's always trying to play jokes on me. But it is like I get to laugh every day because he's usually doing something that's cracking me up, whether it's something devious or whether it's something just completely playful. And my watching the whole me and my daughter and my son interact. How I just watch my daughter interact with him. She is awesome. She treats him like a brother. So she'll get pissed at him, and she'll tell him off, but she also gets it as well. So and she's at the age now where she knows she has to be an older sister and not just try to kick his butt every time, but she's gonna have to protect him every once in a while, as any older sibling would have to do to their younger sibling.
When people hear your story and they walk away, or maybe they see this interview, maybe they don't even know who you are and they see this interview, what is the message you want them to take away from your story?
You know, one of the things I mentioned before is like don't don't do what I did. Don't do it alone. It's going to be a struggle in the beginning to try to adapt, but I had embraced everybody else externally, my friends, family, some of the support systems that are out there, I would have gotten to an acceptance level much faster, way faster. But like I said, this was a gift. I became a much better human, a much better man, because of this. Like I said, I had a plan, and then God said, "No, this is not your path. Your path is over here." And I fought it I'm like, "What are you like? No, my path is here." And you got to be open to your path changing. And I know that's a struggle for a lot of people because, like even growing up, I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to be. And like where I am today is like nowhere what I had thought about back then, but I'm 10 times better off than what I thought I could have been.
As you have 2 children and you look to raise a quote unquote normal child, a child who doesn't have any type of learning disabilities or any disabilities, versus now raising a child who has special needs, specifically Down syndrome, what are the differences in raising those 2 children?
So in some respects, there's no differences. You're going to experience the same exact things that any kid is going to go through. Kids are going to get teased, their hearts are going to get broken, and as a parent, you're not going to be able to be there every time. I think one of the biggest things that may be a difference, and this is kind of why I said it's been a bit of a gift, is because man, I was not a very patient person, very patient man before, and that gets thrust upon you. So I've had to heighten my patience level a bit. Because I'm not as uptight, so that's a good thing. I actually sleep better.
So as I was spending time kind of preparing for our conversation, I was reading an article, and I believe it was a man who was talking about when he is with his child, his Down syndrome child. He says you get one of 2 looks. You get one person who looks at you like you've made an irresponsible choice by knowing that your child would have these special needs and demands, and so still choosing to have the child. And then he says the other look is one of gratitude, and let me see if I can see the word he actually used was they consider you saintly because you made this choice and you still chose to bring a child with special needs into the world. But I guess my biggest question to you is, what do you want people to see? When people see you, they see you with Connor, what do you want people to see?
I would love for them to be able to see him in his daily routine, as in this middle of the sitcom, as the fact that he is the star of this sitcom that I live in daily. He is an absolute blessing. I would be taken if he wasn't on this planet. This planet would be a lesser place. It wouldn't be like there would be something missing. And he affects tons of people around him in a very, very positive way. Outside of me and his sister and his mom, like he has a major positive impact on a lot of people, and like you can't go wrong with that.
There is no doubt about it. Connor is an amazing young man. He attends a public elementary school where 95% of his time is spent in a mainstream classroom. He takes karate year-round, plays hockey in the winter, is on a baseball team in the summer, and just like all other boys his age, spends way too much time on his iPad.
So this is Connor. How old are you, Connor?
I'm 10.
What's the best thing about being you? Your homework?
Yes.
Yeah. What's the best thing about Dad?
He's funny and cute.
He's funny
I'll take that.
and cute. What else? When else did you tell me he helps you with?
Really happy with my homework.
Helps you make you really smart.
Yeah.
Are you really smart?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're really smart. What do you want to be when you grow up?
I'm really cool with my parents.
You're gonna be like your parents?
Firefighter, police, officer.
You want to be a firefighter? This is news to me. You want to be a firefighter or a police officer?
Yes.
Interesting. All right. Which one do you want to do?
The police officer really help you in sipping.
Yeah, nice.
Because they
You
help
can look
you.
at her. She's asking you the questions.
Yeah.
And the firefighter and the hose.
Oh, and drag the hose.
They put out fires though.
So, what's the best part about your dad? Does he love you so much?
Yeah.
Yeah. Best dad ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, best dad ever. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us a little bit today.
Yeah.
You're pretty awesome. Pretty awesome.
Yep.
Oh, I'll take that every day. I'll take that every day. I think you're pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.